October 15th, 1966. The Black Panther Party is created by Huey P. Newton and Bobby Seale. J. Edgar Hoover is hospitalized for an erection lasting more than 4 hours.
Welcome to the Revisionists. Blah, Children of the Night. I'm Brian Flynn.
Oh shit. I'm... Shaq, a scary Shaq. Powers.
Yeah, I didn't do anything. I guess I gave my own name, which is scary, because being known is very intimate, which is frightening. Okay. All right. Joining us once again is Jen with 2 N's. Killick. Jen Colick, everyone. Jen Colick.
Hi, everyone.
Look, it's Halloween. The season of just forced puns and more forced candy into my mouth.
I feel like that's every day for me.
Forced? In what? In the sense that someone else is putting the candy into your mouth?
Mm-hmm. The Three Musketeers are all like, hey.
Are you characterizing your lack of willpower as being forced?
Yeah, that makes it feel better, for sure. Like, for sure. Like, outside circumstances. Ooh.
You're a chocoholic is what you're...
Yeah. I'm a chocoholic, and what do they call it? A coca-holic. There we go.
Is that...
Coca-Cola.
Okay, because that sounds like cocaine, generally speaking.
Yeah,
I can see,
which is not what they call that.
I'm addicted to Coke. Most people would assume, that you're talking about the powder.
Right. No.
The one that's actually addictive?
Just that sweet brown liquid that doesn't actually taste all that awesome once you hit, like, your 30s.
That's the cutoff.
That's how you know you're growing up.
Yeah. I mean, there was a point where I just had not had a sip of Coke for like 5 years, and then had another one, and I was just like, oh, okay. It was like the gap between like smoking a clove in high school and then smoking a clove when I was like 23, and realizing that it was the most horrible thing I've put in my mouth in a very long time. But listeners, this podcast is not about our personal vices.
Not
it's
entirely.
Not.
Sometimes it's about the vices of people who have died long ago. This is The Revisionists. It's a comedy history podcast, at least in concept. And basically, the premise is, each episode, we talk about a person and or event from history. One of the trio, Brian, myself, and a guest, give an actual account of that person or event, or at least what the history books have jotted down in their flawed little margins, and one of us gives an alternate history that could be spawned from anywhere. It could be from, based on Lord of the Rings, as it has been a number of times. It could be based on Home Alone, as it has been a number of times. It could be spawned from Spawn. Or it could be an original concept altogether. It doesn't matter. It's whatever the person wants.
We've not done Spawn, which actually I think is fair, because I don't know that it's a very good archetype to apply to a lot of other things.
Well, we won't know until we've tried, I guess. Regardless, John Leguizamo plays a demon clown, so, there's that.
We've also not done Joe's Apartment, speaking of John Leguizamo.
Sure, yeah.
Isn't that the one with all the roaches?
Yes, that is correct.
Great. So that creep show segment also maybe would be a good jumping off point. Regardless, at the end, we vote on what becomes the true history of the brilliant blue spinning iridescent marble we call the Earth going forward. We are in spooky season, as you no doubt are aware from our spooky opening soundtrack and our spooky puns and how terrified you are at the concept of having to listen to the remainder of this podcast. So we last time did Burke and Hare. We're recording this very quickly afterwards. It's a less than 1 week turnaround, so we don't have the results for this adventure of Burke and Hare, where in one version they were Burke and Hare, murderers and corpse sellers, and in another one they were an Edinburgh Fringe Festival failed stand-up comedy act that kind of did an Andy Kaufman performance artist thing. But we'll get back to you next time with the results of that one. For this time, we're talking about old Carl Tanzler. Jovial fella. Known about town for his antics and frolics. We'll get more into depth on that. And I forgot to ask before the show, actually, who's doing the actual and who's doing the alternate.
I'm doing the actual.
Okay, so Brian is doing the actual this time.
Yes.
I guess without further ado, we might as well jump into the soothing story of Carl Tanzler.
Yep. I did not put together until you were just talking about Burke and Hare that we sort of have a theme for these two, and it's fucked up. This is normally like I look forward to Halloween episodes because like they get to be a little more fun typically than some of the other history we talk about.
I mean, they've often been about. We did H.H. Holmes. He killed.
That's true.
A lot of people.
Yeah. This one is the maybe grossest episode in our history.
Yeah. I would. Yeah.
So just I'll give a content warning when we're about to get into that, just so you know. But there's content warning for body snatching and necrophilia.
The alien kind of body snatching?
No, not the bad kind. Yeah.
Okay, not the kind where
there's no Donald Sutherland in this.
We're replaced by a species of alien who theoretically run the planet better.
Yeah. I mean, at this point, like, I'm going to go ahead and say almost certainly run the planet better.
Okay.
I'd be down to at least try it. I mean...
Yeah. I mean, look, it's the great American experiment. My sources for this episode were, among others, allthat'sinteresting.com, which had some unhinged stuff, UK Museum Facts, which was more hinged, and Wikipedia, which was the most hinged of all three. So, Maria Elena Milagro...
So the middle one was like a Dutch door. I guess a Dutch door... Maybe a Dutch door is the most hinged. So it probably has like 4 hinges, right?
Yeah, it would have to, right?
It definitely has the most hinges per, like, linear foot.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's Wikipedia. That's the Dutch door. And then the first one was a sliding door, and then the second one was a regular door.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is also an interior design podcast. So, Maria Elena Milagro de Hoyos was born the daughter of a stay-at-home mom and a cigar maker in Key West, Florida in 1909. Her parents were Cuban-American. I'm not sure which generation they were, but she also had 2 sisters, Florinda and Celia.
I hope they weren't Gen Z. Ugh. Those Gen Zers. Always tick-tocking and whatever the news made up about them doing this week.
Basically a lot of the same shit that they made up about millennials when we were that age.
Giving people drugs in their Halloween candy.
Yeah. Drinking Clorox or whatever the fuck.
Yeah.
Pepto-Bismol challenge or whatever.
Yeah, the NyQuil chicken, which I'm sure no more than like 3 people ever did.
Yeah, generously, yeah.
Yeah. So, in 1926, Elena, who is also sometimes went by the Americanized name Helen, marries a man named Luis Mesa. Shortly after, she becomes pregnant, but then suffers a miscarriage, after which Mesa abandons her, though they remain legally married the rest of Elena's life. At some point between 1926 and 1930, Elena is diagnosed with tuberculosis, which was like the hot disease of the late 19th and early 20th century.
Sure. TB.
Sorry, smallpox. Polio, get out of here.
Yeah, but they both had a good run.
Yes.
Scarlet fever? Is that just tuberculosis? I don't know. Scarlet fever is like a second thing.
Yeah.
I think scarlet fever is its own thing.
Okay. Yeah, like if you can develop scarlet fever if you have like another disease.
Consumption? One of them is also called consumption or something like that.
Consumption and tuberculosis were
the same thing.
Same thing, apparently.
Oh, okay, good.
Which was also vampirism, according to morons. Look for morons to return in our story. So, seeking treatment, Elena's mother brought her eventually to the U.S. Marine Hospital in Key West, Florida, where one of her care team was presumably an alligator in a lab coat, but another one was a radiologist named Count Karl von Kosel. And I don't know why he opted for Count instead of Doctor. I
assume every time this man entered a room and announced his name, lightning struck in the background.
Yeah, definite. If you look up a picture of this guy, spoiler alert, Count Karl von Kosel, not his real name. Yeah, he definitely looks the mad scientist, evil person type, because guess what? Spoiler alert.
And he would go around trying to hypnotize people and saying,
and then counting things. Mm-hmm. Yeah. We have a toddler. So I'm also not going to try to delve too deeply into this dude's mind for reasons we'll soon find out. So like I said, Count Karl von Kosel wasn't his real name. He was born as Georg Karl Tanzler in Dresden, Germany. And like he has a few different names, which is not uncommon for immigrants of the time.
Or psychotic. Swindler. Creepos.
Creep-butts.
Yes.
When he became a U.S. citizen, his name was
listed. Or for J.K. Rowling.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't see how she doesn't fit into the first category.
That's, yeah.
Immigrants?
That's true. Okay.
Oh, yeah, I guess she's not an immigrant. Yeah, that's true.
I mean, she's foreign to us. Yeah. So, like, sorry, that was, his name was listed as Karl Tanzler von Kosel on his citizenship papers, and on his death certificate, it's simply Karl Tanzler. Side note, including the name Von in his fake name means that, like, and I've learned this from Behind the Bastards, that
he likes Gus Von Sant's Psycho.
Yeah, loved Gus Von Sant.
Well, I was thinking of Vince Vaughn being
Norman. Which is also a completely different spelling. It's not. I would love it if it was Vince Vaughn. Vince V-O-N. Just leave them guessing. But Vaughn is like a German aristocratic thing. So if you include that in your fake name, you're pretending to be an aristocracy.
Yeah, I assumed it meant like
also.
Yeah, Count is also.
Count is a title. I thought Von meant like of, or like it was something that meant like somebody who is of a certain place. Yeah,
which I think is correct. But again, it's like it's applied only, or it was applied at the time only to like nobility.
Mm-hmm.
So Tanzler moved at some point before World War I to Australia, where he planned to buy a boat and, quote, go live in the South Seas. This is according to an about the author from a piece he published in a magazine in 1939. And so when you find out what he was doing in 1939, you might doubt his trustworthiness.
But, wanting to buy a boat and live in the sea is a very L. Ron Hubbard move.
There's a couple L. Ron Hubbard elements in here.
That does not surprise... Well, I mean, wanting to create his own version of reality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But while he's in Australia, World War I breaks out, and the British Empire moves him and others of, like, German and other nationalities living in their territory into concentration camps. And then at the end of the war, he's shipped to the Netherlands because they weren't sending people back to, like, the nations they came from that the British had a problem with. But he goes back to Germany anyway. It's weird. And he tracks down his mom, and they spend a few years together before she suggests he move to the United States, either for a better life or to get him the hell away from her. Who knows?
I have a guess.
Yeah, could be both. So in 1926, he settles in a town called Zephyr Hills, Florida. Zephyr Hills is one word, so it looks super fucked up.
It looks like German syphilis or something.
Yeah, it looks very much like a disease you get from doing stuff with your genitals. And so he's joined in Zephyr Hills soon after by his wife and 2 daughters. And in 1927, the next year, he leaves them behind and moves to Key West to take a job as a radiologist at the Marine Hospital. Again, still married to them, and I couldn't find anything to say, like, whether this was a, like, divorce type or, like, divorce without legal proceedings type separation. Although, like, his wife ends up taking care of him, like, to his death, so it may have been one of the things that, like, my great-grandfather did when he just, like, had to go live in another town for a while and work to earn money. So, who knows? So, multiple fucking sources I read phrased what happened next in the same absolutely incorrect and totally out of fucking pocket way. Which is that as soon as Carl Tanzler saw his patient, Elena, he fell in love with her. Which I don't necessarily believe in love at first sight, but I hella don't believe that love involves most of what's about to fucking happen.
Any of it. Literally any of it.
I see. So this is what You've Got Mail is based on.
Yes, this is it.
He's going to drive her little business out of business with his big radiology empire. I get it.
Yep.
He's going to drive her mom and pop radiology shop out of business.
Oh man, mom and pop radiology shop is kind of catchy. I don't think, like, with viral marketing like that they would really be in danger.
The radiology shop around the corner, you know.
Yeah.
So, at some point, and I could never find when this was, because he writes before and after the incident that we're going to get into in a few minutes. He has written sort of, like, autobiographical accounts of his life, and I could not trace this claim to one that either predated what he's about to do or one that came after his attempt to sort of justify it. Basically, like, at some point he does lose his absolute gourd. And so, like, it could have been that he thought this all his life, or it could have been that he just came up with it after he did a bad thing to justify it. But at some point, Tanzler claimed that as a child, he received visions of Countess Anna Konstantina von Kosel, a dead aristocrat who was maybe an ancestor of his, who was actually kind of interesting in her own right. She was the royal mistress to King Augustus the Strong of Poland, who was strong. And a lot of the Catholics didn't like her because they felt she was interfering too much in politics.
Yeah, but I feel like if a bunch of Catholics don't like you, you're probably doing something right.
Yeah, that's true. Or you're a condom.
In which case, you're doing something right.
Yeah, that's true, actually. The revisionists endorse condoms. Not just for squares anymore. Also, she did not have any reported habit of appearing in people's visions. So, anyway, Tanzler claimed that in his visions, his ancestor revealed the face of his destined true love, which he described as a dark-haired foreign woman, which, coincidence, happened to describe Elena.
Let's get, second incorrect thing. He's the fucking foreigner.
Yes, that is...
She's not the foreigner. She's American. He's the fucking foreigner.
Yeah, I mean... Look...
Anyway, fuck you, Carl Tanzler.
I totally agree. That is about to become so unimportant.
It's such a non-issue compared to everything else this motherfucker does. It just doesn't... I just hate him so much.
So by this time, Elena's tuberculosis had progressed to the point where it was pretty severe. And Tanzler volunteered to use his medical knowledge to help treat her. Medical knowledge that seems to be entirely self-taught. He brought various homemade elixirs and tonics. Side note, did you know there's a difference between an elixir and a tonic?
I bet they both contained his fucking jizz or some disgusting thing.
Yeah, I mean, probably. But he brought those to the Hoyos' home, and he even brought large X-ray and electrical equipment to the house, along with jewelry and clothes for Elena, and he kept professing his love for her. There's no evidence that Elena ever reciprocated, because why would she?
At this point, also, how old is Carl Tanzler?
That is a very good question.
Wasn't he 30 years older than her?
It was something like that. There is a huge age gap. I forgot to write down when he was actually born, but there is a massive, massive age gap. Because Elena at this time in 1930 would be 20 or 21.
Yeah. She was definitely young enough to be his daughter.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Elena, like I said, her illness had already progressed pretty far by the time she encountered Tanzler. And she died of tuberculosis on October 25th, 1931.
Do you think in your... Sorry, I didn't... Actually, I already knew the story, so I didn't really do, any research whatsoever for this. Did you find any evidence in your research that, Tanzler actually believed he was, helping or able to help her? Or does this sound like it was, kind of just all a pretext to, creep on her?
I mean, it's so hard to say, and, speaking to someone's intent from, this far away, I'm sort of the mindset that he probably, given some of the stuff he attempts to do later on, I think he has a totally out of bounds belief and totally fucked up understanding of science and medicine. So it's entirely possible that he thought he could cure her.
True. Okay.
But also, this guy is... I don't want to use the C word as a pejorative, so he is not in his right mind. So anyway,
I mean, there's definitely something wrong with him. Like,
yes.
It's not, you can't, especially, not a psychologist. He's been dead for a long time. Can't diagnose someone like that, but, there was very, very, very much something very deeply wrong with him.
I feel like in the, psychologist textbooks where they say, it's irresponsible to diagnose someone through time and sort of across, such vast distances, there's a big asterisk and it says, except Carl Tanzler, that dude was fucked up.
Yeah.
So not only did Tanzler pay for Elena's whole funeral, he hired a mortician to prepare her body, and he even got the family to give him permission to construct an elaborate mausoleum for her in Key West Cemetery. There's not a lot of great info about how her family felt about Tanzler at this time. Also, they were dealing with, the loss of Elena, so, even if they had misgivings, they were not necessarily dealing with things in, the right frame of mind. Even if they had a good relationship, that would sour. So what the Hoyos family did not know was that there would be only one key to this mausoleum, and that key would belong to Carl Tanzler. So, for the next 2 years, Tanzler visited Elena's mausoleum every night, basically up until the point where he lost his job because he was, quote, exhibiting erratic behavior, which is, yeah, dog, that's a big ol' understatement there, buddy. He later said he would spend the night sitting by her tomb and he would sing her her favorite song in Spanish, and that her spirit would come visit him. And this is where I'm about to put in the content warning, because if you think this is weirdo shit so far, we're about to get into...
Then you haven't read Wuthering Heights.
This episode brought to you by Emily Bronte, everyone. So, yeah, again, content warning for the things I described earlier, grave robbing and necrophilia. Tanzler says that Elena's ghost would repeatedly tell him to remove her body from her grave. And in April of 1933, he did. He brought a toy red wagon to the cemetery that night and took her body from the mausoleum to his house, which is such a fucked up detail that it's horrifying.
A 2-year decomposed body.
Yes.
In a child's wagon.
Yeah.
Out in the open. I guess it was the middle of the night.
It was the middle of the night, yeah. And I don't know, what sort of route he had to take, from his house to the cemetery. But yes, he was...
And to be fair, until a certain point in fairly recent history, people are pretty cavalier about people having bodies.
Yeah, that's actually...
Yep.
There's a certain point, I think it must have been, April of, 45, when people were like, maybe we shouldn't just let people... Maybe we should check on this.
It was probably after VJ Day.
Yeah, get that off our plate, and then be like...
We didn't have people in 1945 until the war was over. People didn't have time to be worried about random people walking around with bodies.
Yeah, exactly.
There were fascists running around. Hitler was still alive in April of 45. You didn't have time to worry about some guy with a wagon body.
Also, All That's Interesting article I read said, and this is one of the unhinged parts, quote, that that in taking the body, it was no longer requiring him to make his nightly visits to the graveyard. Like, it's a fucking infomercial. like I saved time and cut out a whole trip.
Yeah, I like this idea, though. Do you...
That's the
Do you
worst
have to visit
ad
your
for
loved
a
ones
Little Red
every
Wagon
night
I've
and
ever
ever
heard.
think, there has to be a better way? What if your loved ones could be with you?
With new
And actually,
Uber
the
Ghoul.
answer to this is cremation. Just cremate them and put them in an urn in your house.
The timing of the grave robbing could be chalked up in part because it was around the time that he lost his job that, like, he did this. It could also be chalked up to some of the work Tanzler was doing on his house because he had taken an old airplane fuselage and built a medical laboratory inside of it.
Cool. Good.
Yeah.
Define medical laboratory also.
I don't know. Nothing.
He just fucking stole some, like, Bunsen burners from the radiology department and shoved them in an old, like, airplane and, like, called it a fucking laboratory.
Yeah. I mean, I guess all you need is a centrifuge at a certain point. I don't know.
Did they have centrifuges at this point?
No, they just had a sock you spun around your head.
Maybe some cardboard tubing. Oh,
Yeah.
that was a...
We'll get.
That was
we'll
in
get,
poor taste.
We'll
That
get
was
to
in poor
that.
taste.
So, like we said, Elena had been dead 2 years at this point, and even though the mortician Tanzler hired, their work meant that her body was better preserved than one might expect at that point. That wasn't enough for Tanzler. Some people, am I right?
Impossible to please.
Yeah. This guy.
This is what you get with these unreal body expectations. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
This is what
Instagram just
this is what
ruined
the
it.
movies are doing to us these days.
Yeah.
These fucking magazines.
So Tanzler starts doing a lot of this is a terrible phrase that should not be attached to anything. He starts doing a lot of DIY mortician projects to basically dress up Elena's body to his liking. Like, he claimed he was trying to reconstruct her to, like, what she looked like when she was alive. And unfortunately, any article you see has pictures of what he built using her body. And it's also like he's building it to his preference and his memory, no matter what he says. So again, this is about to get into some upsetting body stuff. So he ties her bones together with piano wire and fits her eye sockets with glass eyes. This whole process did not happen all at once. Tanzler has Elena's body in his house for the next 7 years. So during that time, he replaces her decomposing skin with silk cloth soaked in wax and plaster. Elena's mom had given Tanzler at some point a lock of her hair, and he has that turned into a wig to replace her hair as it falls out. He fills...
This is a real ship of Theseus for me, to be honest with you.
A what?
Ship of Theseus. It's a mental. All right. Briefly.
Oh, is it like you're replacing so many things that at what point is it no longer the... Yeah.
Yeah, like there's a ship and they replace one board, and over the course of years, ultimately every part of the ship is replaced. Mm-hmm. Is it the same ship? And at what point did it stop being the ship?
Yeah, and I mean...
I think the part where she fucking died.
Yeah, I was going to say,
like,
where she
the
dies,
point
it
where
can
the
no longer
ship
give...
dies.
If there's a point where a boat can no longer give consent...
I'd concede that it's still her corpse, initially.
Sure,
but,
sure.
Yeah.
And like, I see what you mean. Like, even like for his deranged perspective, like at a certain point, it's so far removed.
It's
from
a mannequin
his
with
obsession.
a lock of hair tied in at some point.
Yeah. But yeah, he fills her chest with abdominal he fills her chest and abdominal cavities with rags.
Well, I think you're about to get to it, but the parts of her that are left are the parts that fucking reek because she's a corpse.
Yes. Yeah. Listeners, if you didn't know, corpses smell bad. And also should be in the ground. Or
at the
like
very least.
The sky. I don't know. Like wherever you want to be buried.
Like burned, sky burial.
Placed in Henry Kissinger's refrigerator.
If you're a naturalist,
Yeah, baby.
Throw it in the woods and feed some animals.
Compost me. That's fine.
That's literally what I want, and I'm saying it on the podcast, which counts as a legally binding will. I do want to be composted. I want to turn into a tree. I want to be an ant. I'm saying that now.
I think that would suit you.
Oh yeah. Oh, I got big ant energy, baby. Tree beard. So he also he keeps Elena's body in his bed, and like Jen said, because of the smell, he has a habit of pouring perfume and disinfectant over her body, because it is a body.
He has a habit, or it is a necessity?
It's a necessity because
it's fucking rotting meat.
Yeah, because I'm sure he's doing that for his own reasons, but I'm sure part of it is also not being caught necessarily. Although the perfume is part of what does get him caught eventually. So there is some evidence that surfaced in 1972 that, and this is the most upsetting part, that he reconstructs Elena's vagina with a cardboard tube. And the fact that, there are some people who question, whether he actually did this specific thing with a cardboard tube, some people use that to say, well, it's uncertain whether this counts as necrophilia. And I'm here to tell you that we're way past necrophilia. That, it doesn't matter if you reconstruct the genitals of a corpse, you're still committing necrophilia.
I thought the argument was, well, he reconstructed her vag. That doesn't necessarily mean that he
I'm sure there were other people saying that too, which is
ridiculous.
Out of pocket. Super out of pocket. At a certain point, if you're doing something solely because, it satisfies you sexually or romantically, it doesn't matter if you do, if there's actual, penetration, it's necrophilia.
Well, and just also, you're not gonna... why else would you do that?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? There's only one reason to do that. Yeah.
Tanzler also referred to the bed he kept Elena's body in as their marital bed. Anyone trying to dismiss it as not necrophilia is, lost in semantics. This is absolutely. And at some point in this span of 7 years, Tanzler begins building, a rocket airship in his backyard. Why? Because he wanted to shoot Elena's body into the edge of space.
Yeah. He said, one of these days, Elena, bam, pow, straight to the moon.
Yeah, he was the fucking inspiration for Ralph Cramden. Yeah, because famously, they cut this from every episode of Honeymooners. He was like, because the radiation will reanimate your body. He literally thought that the radiation in the stratosphere would bring Elena back to life. We know he thought this because it's what he said in court. Not in court, somewhere along the line. Look, he was building a rocket ship. He had a body. He said this at some point.
When you're when all you have is a hammer, what's the phrase? Something
everything looks like a nail.
Everything looks like a nail.
When you're a radiologist, everything looks like a problem that's solved by radiology.
That's.
Well, and this was also when did Radium Girls happen?
The Radium
that was
Girls.
That was a little bit earlier, right?
Yeah, that was during World War One. That and this is a story we should tell at some point. That the Radium Girls were painting radium onto watches and dials for fighter pilots, and many of them got sick because of the methods the company that employed them taught them to use. And there was a time, in the 19-teens and 20s, where people thought radium was health food, and it was in cereal and baby formula.
It was literally the pomegranate seed of the 19-teens.
Yeah, if Gwyneth
there was
Paltrow,
fucking radium water and stuff that was marketed to people as health tonics and stuff.
Oh man, if Gwyneth Paltrow had been alive at that point in time,
she would have had people shoving fucking radium up their vages.
Yeah.
Yeah. And people would have done it.
Yeah. So, I mean, this was at a certain point when people had started learning
Gen Z were around, they would have been the Radium Challenge. Friggin' Gen Z.
Yes. So townspeople were spreading rumors about Tanzler, because, hey, he seemed like just a weird dude in general, but he was also constantly buying a shitload of perfume.
Wagon loads?
The amount of perfume where people are this guy's buying a suspicious amount of perfume. I don't know what that quantity is, but apparently there's a limit. Also,
for a guy who doesn't live with his wife anymore.
Yeah. So, this is also pre-Costco. So also take that in consideration.
So he's paying full price for it.
Yeah. So he's also a sucker. Apparently a local boy also claimed to have seen Tanzler dancing with what he thought was a life-size doll through Tanzler's front window. Which
gives me Home Alone vibes.
Yeah.
In a way that I'm very uncomfortable with.
Yeah. This was, of course, before the first Talk Boy, so they had to put on a Victrola with a recording of, anyway. So, the rumors build and build until 1940, when...
to be fair, I feel like this body is an effective anti-burglary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because, when Harry and Marv break in there, what are they going to do when they see that? They're going to be like... We gotta go.
This McAllister kid is just... He's gone too far even for us. I know we're the wet bandits, but this is too much. I don't know what the fuck that means. I didn't intend it to mean anything. So in 1940, Elena's sister went to confront Tanzler, and she gets in the house, and finds what she thinks is an effigy of her sister. And police rolled up at some point and discovered that what Elena's sister thought was an effigy was actually Elena's body. So Tanzler was arrested for grave robbing, but the charges were dropped against him in October that year because the statute of limitations had expired. The case had created a media sensation at the time because of course it did. And a lot of people, and by people, I mean morons, viewed Tanzler as, like, a sympathetic and even romantic figure.
Well, because he only raped one corpse, like that, because he loved it.
Yeah.
He wasn't just going around willy-nilly raping everyone's corpses. Like, some people. Like, this one was special.
It's tale as old as time. No, it's not.
Well, I mean, it kind of is, though. It's the same thing as, like, a woman is like, hey, this guy attacked me. And like, well, where's everyone else? You're the only one. It must be, you must be lying if you're the only one. It's like, nah.
Or even to the point of, like, and this is not as antiquated a rape apology as, like, it should be, but, like, oh, he was just doing it because he likes you, or can't you see that, like, something like that. But Tanzler does leave town after this and moves closer to Zephyr Hills, and his fucking family that is still there that he abandoned. And he went on to write like an autobiographical, like, not novella, but like a short autobiographical piece that appeared in the pulp sci-fi magazine Fantastic Adventures, which is where, like, you get a lot of, like, the sympathetic sounding information about him.
I guess my life really was a fantastic adventure.
Yeah. Also, I couldn't find anything that specifically said Fantastic Adventures was one of the places where L. Ron Hubbard had his work published, but given, like, the amount that motherfucker wrote and submitted, and given the era, I'd be shocked if they had not also published L. Ron Hubbard.
I'm sure he was printed all over the place.
Yeah. Or, what was his other name? Winchester Remington Colt. There we go.
Yeah.
3 guns.
Very manly.
Yeah.
Not at all suspicious or insecure sounding.
Which, of course, his other name, large penis, big penis, wide penis. Somehow, at some point, Tanzler acquired a death mask of Elena, which I said somehow when I was writing my notes, he had access to her body for 9 years total.
Yeah, I could take a guess where he got that.
And he used the death mask to create a life-sized effigy of Elena.
Because of course he did.
Of course. Out of, like, a metal tube, silk, and wax. And he lived in his house alone with that effigy until 1952 when he died. And his story ends up as fodder for, like, pulp magazines for decades. And in
highly romanticized form.
Yeah. Some of the authors also add details. Most notably, an article from 1982 said that workers doing a renovation in his home allegedly found a note confessing to killing Elena with poison, like when she was, like, what the note purported to be like a mercy killing, which 1982 is the first time this claim shows up, and the only other times, like, you find citations of that, people are citing that 1982 article. So there's no real other evidence besides that, but that is out there. So I personally believe that he did not. He was definitely the kind of person who I'm sure viewed himself as, like, trying to save her life up until she dies naturally, because I'm heroic and, like, I'm not going to kill her. I'm just going to do everything I've just spent the last half hour describing.
I think there's there definitely is like a way, like he could have, if he did that, like if he actually murdered her also, as if everything else wasn't fucking bad enough. Like there are people who like consider the murders they commit to be mercy killings.
Yeah.
A lot of people who like murder people in like nursing homes or like hospitals, like a lot of like angel of death type people will like justify it by saying like, oh, it was a mercy killing.
Yeah. And like, yeah, there was, I forget which case it was. There was like a similar case where like the defense attorney was making the argument that, like, Your Honor, what my client did wasn't murder. He was just hastening the inevitable. And the judge was like,
get the fuck out of here.
The judge's response was like, that's what all murder does, right? That is the thing about murder. Yeah, not to bring it down, listeners, but every episode we like to remind you we're all going to die one day. So after Tanzler's arrest, the authorities, first of all, I mean, Elena's body is examined by, like pathologists and coroners. But then the authorities, and I can't figure out why, other than like like sort of like car wreck mentality, like you have to see this, and just cruelty also. But they put Elena's corpse on public display in a funeral home. And about 6,800 people came in over the next few days to view her body and what was done to it. And it was later, soon after, reburied in Key West Cemetery in an unmarked grave. And that is the true story of Carl Tanzler.
All right. Thank you much, Brian, for sharing the true story.
I do want to apologize to your listeners, because when Brian was like, "Hey, do you want to come on and do a Halloween episode?" I was like, "Sure." What topics are you kicking around? Hey, Carl Tanzler, I know that story. I'll do that one because I don't have to do any research for it.
We had so many fun topics to choose from.
Oh man, I regret everything.
Full disclosure. Early in the episode, actually before we recorded and early in the episode, especially when you're giving those warnings, I thought I confused Carl Tanzler with Carl Panzram, and this is the lighter story by a fair margin. So, no. Yeah.
I will not be Googling that guy later.
Well, he's a serial killer, so, fair warning.
You're
Googling it right now, aren't you?
I'm not reading it, but his hair is already alarming.
Oh, that's wild. No, absolutely not. No,
yeah.
Do not want to know anything about that dude. Ugh, no. He looks like a human, like, shark.
Yeah, no, he
not like
was
a cute shark,
for street
like
sharks.
a scary shark. Like dead inside, like gonna take your arm off.
Killer. Early 1900s serial killer. Yeah.
Anyway, listeners, the next Halloween episode is going to be a lot of fun. I promise. And it will have, if I remember correctly, no grave robbing. That's a revisionist almost guarantee. 95% sure, no grave robbing.
One episode only, no grave robbing.
Yep. And then we'll be back to our series on, what is it? Oh, British archaeology. Ah, shit. Okay.
So I've got the alternate, and I feel like As horrible as this story is, I'm going to kind of enjoy this one. So, yes, Carl Tanzler was a creepy stalker who harassed a dying woman and her family. They kind of all hated him, because he was, I mean, not a normal, nice, warm, like, regular guy outside of the grave robbing and corpse raping. Like, he was a weirdo and a creep all the way through. But they felt they really had no choice but to accept his help, because all of the other doctors that they took Elena to basically just told them, like, yep, it's TB, you're fucked. Nothing we can do.
Yeah.
So
also it's the 30s, so they were probably smoking in the
exam rooms. Yeah. Oh, definitely. They were like handing out cigarettes as you came in. The thing is, the doctors were wrong. She did not have TB. She definitely probably had asthma. And definitely suffered from, like, a series of, like, really severe respiratory illnesses. But not TB. There was like a case of pneumonia, so bad that she actually fell into a coma. And they thought she was dead. So they had her buried. Her family had her buried, in this mausoleum, that, you know, Carl Tanzler offered to, like, pay for it all. And they...
Oh, good. I'm glad you're doing, like that somehow, like, a more enjoyable version involves being buried alive, which is, like...
She's at least not underground.
Yeah, in mausoleums, you're just, like, in a...
It's just like a house. It's like a little house for your corpse. Like, it's cozy.
Okay.
They put a fern in there with her. She's fine.
Okay, yeah. Mausoleum, the original tiny home, I guess.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, they
put
put
a tiny house.
those little sand gardens in there. It was nice.
Yeah.
There's a chia pet that looked like, what's his name? Ross, the painter.
Bob Ross. Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you meant Ross from Friends until you said the painter. Which I'm like, that's a wild chia pet, if you could choose any of them.
That is not an image that I... of all the images that this episode has...
oh, that's the one.
That's the cherry on top.
That's the one.
That's the cherry on top, really.
That would push you over the edge.
It was the one that I wasn't expecting.
David Schwimmer chia pet.
Yes. It was the one I wasn't expecting.
That's true.
They had a big mouth Billy Bass that sang the Friends theme. It's just a big Friends vibe.
This one goes out to all of my coworkers. We're very into Friends.
So Carl Tanzler offers to pay for the mausoleum, and her family is like, well, it's the least you could do after fucking basically harassing her to death. Sure. You know, thanks, I guess. We're grieving, leave us alone. He definitely kept a key to the tomb. And a few days after Elena was laid to rest, he went to quote unquote visit her, aka assault her fucking corpse. Luckily, she woke up, like, mid-assault, was very confused for a second, but managed to defend herself. AKA she killed him. She fucking killed him, guys. Elena rose from the dead and murdered Carl Tanzler like he So upon a search of Tanzler's body, he's kind of laying on the floor in a crumpled heap.
She's looting him at this point.
Well, she's kind of going off instinct here.
Torch.
Yes.
Wolf pelt.
Yeah. They've got like some like cozy decor in there, no lights. So she needs the torch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, cast mage light. Anyway.
Yeah.
I'm not here to...
She's not a mage.
Yeah.
Okay.
She keeps on setting off the big mouth Billy Bass in the dark.
It's very frustrating, yeah. She finds two important things on his body. One is the key to the crypt. And the second is Carl Tanzler's diary.
Oh, how embarrassing.
I know, right? It's got one of those like cheap little locks on it, but she's able to jimmy that open.
This sounds like when you kill a boss on a video game and you get the little screen that's like items on the corpse. It's like key to the crypt, Carl's diary.
Chainmail.
Yeah. And at some point she becomes the Elden Lord.
Yeah.
And the chainmail. Yeah, the Tanzler armor, of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
The Tanzler set. Yeah.
Just walking around the Vogue office being like, "Oh, is that the Tanzler set?"
It's the third best armor in the game. Very high fire resist.
Also, your coworkers are so fucking jealous.
Yeah.
So, in his diary, she reads his diary, and in his diary he has recorded this sick, deluded fantasy of stealing Elena's corpse and quote unquote marrying it. Upon reading this, our hero Elena vomited all over Carl Tanzler's corpse. Of course, she'd been in a coma for a few days, so it was really just all like stomach acid and like bile. It was super gross.
Cool.
Yeah.
Oh, because it was fine. It wasn't gross before.
No, it was even grosser. And then she just left his soiled body in the tomb and locked it in. So she's very badly shaken at this point. She finds her way home. It's the middle of the night. She returns to her family. She did have to prove that she wasn't a vampire. But once they,
Yeah, once they fed her some garlic.
Once they fed her some garlic and sprinkled her with holy water and all that stuff.
And she got bored of counting rice.
Exactly. They eventually dropped the crucifixes, and they were overjoyed to see her. They were so happy and so relieved. Once they sort of got over their shock and their elation at having their daughter back, Elena's mother quickly moved into crisis management and cleanup mode. She helped Elena move Tanzler's body back to his house.
So she's Harvey Keitel from Pulp Fiction at this point.
Yeah. She's like, look, I'm sorry your dress has vomit on it. We gotta burn it. I know it's your favorite one. That's why we buried you in it. I'll buy you a new one. Like, we're not going to jail on this. So they took Tanzler's body back to his house. They staged the scene to look like a suicide. They just basically threw some bottles of rat poison around, like put a couple in his pockets, emptied one out, put an empty one in his hand. The bile and vomit spewed all over Tanzler's face actually fit right in. It kind of looked like he just drank a bunch of rat poison and then like started vomiting as he died.
Well, and also no one's going to get close enough to that because it's totally grody.
Yeah, it's super gross. They weren't really like into forensics in those days.
CSI hadn't started yet.
Yeah. So, like, they were like, look, no one's going to know the difference. So they kept the diary, though, but they hid it inside the wall of Tanzler's house because it was... They were afraid they might need it if they were found out. But it was such a disturbing narrative that they didn't want to keep it in their own home. So they put it, they hid it in the wall of Tanzler's house. It was actually rediscovered by workmen in the early 60s, which is how we know about it. As for Elena, she, after the heat died down around Carl's death, she still felt like she needed a bit more closure. So after Tanzler's funeral, she stole his body, strapped it to a rocket, and launched it into the fucking sun. The end.
I'm picturing her, like, watching that very much in Looney Tunes style, where it's just like...
Yep, just that little arc, and just, yep. Just waving a handkerchief. Bye, motherfucker.
Jen, thank you.
You're welcome.
Listeners, before we move on to Judgment Phase, just want to say that, hey, did you know that if you write a review for this podcast on your podcast service of choice, we'd really appreciate it? And it would help us out, like, a lot. Like, it helps us move up the old algorithm. The algorithm.
Which was the only rap that Tipper Gore supported in the 90s.
Yep. Got it. I dug us a hole and Zach pulled us out. Anyway, but if you leave a 5-star written review, write whatever you want. Write just the methods you're using to scrub the story of Carl Tanzler from your mind.
Tell us your ideal chia pet.
Yeah, tell us your ideal chia pet and your nightmare chia pet, and then we'll get merch going, I guess. But yeah, that helps us get more butts in the seats. You can also ask us a question, leave us a comment at revisionistpodcast.com. Just click on the contact form, or reach out via Instagram or Twitter if Elon Musk doesn't buy it.
He's being, like, investigated over that deal now.
Oh yeah, I'm.
Yeah, it seems like he's being pretty. I think he's going to buy it, and he doesn't want to, but he's going to have to.
Okay, sorry, you froze for a second there.
I think he's going to buy it. I don't think he wants to, but I think he's going to have to.
Yeah, which is honestly most people's relationship with Twitter. I feel like at this point...
Yeah.
Not mine, baby. Yeah. I'm not on Twitter.
Booyah. I am. I get to read people's dumb thoughts about why they think Stalin is good and the Iran protests are bad. Because...
They're misogynists who don't know history?
Yeah. Anyway.
Sorry, I figured I would just...
Yeah. No, fair.
Just make it easy.
You can also support us via Patreon for as little as $1 a month. And buy your right to vote on episode outcomes. Zach, you co-host the Movie Trap podcast.
That's true. It's a movie podcast, as many podcasts are. This one's different because it's hosted by 3 white guys. And we basically have a theme that we pick. Everybody puts forward a movie. At the end of the 3-episode round, we vote on who had the best movie, and that winner gets to pick the next theme. We're doing our Halloween season right now. We're talking about movies that take place on or near Halloween, the actual day in the Gregorian year. And we talked about technically October Sky, for instance, would qualify for this theme. Like we agreed, like, yeah, I mean, that works, that counts. So far we have picked spooky movies, but who knows? Our third host might throw a monkey wrench in there and pick something that just happens to take place around in October and has nothing to do with Halloween.
Love it. Sorry, Zach, you froze up a couple times in there, so sorry if we're a little off. Yeah.
No, that's all right.
Listeners, as for...
Just let it be said, I had at least one banger joke.
Perfect. Jen, did you want to...
I'll plug a couple of things. I will plug Giving Money to Emily's List, which is an organization that supports pro-choice Democrat women who are running for office. No men, no Republicans, no fucking anti-choice candidates, which is also who you should be fucking voting for, by the way. Yeah. Vote for pro-choice women and Democrats next month, or honestly, jump off a cliff.
Yeah. Sorry, did you want to plug anything else? Or was it just jumping off a cliff was your other plug?
Yeah, no, jumping off a cliff was my other plug. Those are your two choices, guys.
This episode brought to you by Big Cliff. Big Cliff Industry. I'll second that. I also donate to Emily's List. They're great. And yeah. I lost it. Okay.
I don't want my daughter growing up with fewer rights than I had growing up.
Right.
There were times that I really needed dependable reproductive health services, and we know a lot of people, many of our friends and family, who have also really needed, science and medicine-based reproductive care, and everyone deserves it.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah. You made this mess, go fix it.
So that brings us to Judgment, which falls to Zach this time.
Yeah. I'm not above a good revenge story. I've watched a few Park Chan-wook movies in my time. I've seen Old Boy, Sympathy for Lady Vengeance, et al. So yeah, I can dig just an old fashioned little revenge spin. And obviously the original story is weird and upsetting, and sort of like a weird Ed Gein sort of little horror story. So might as well go with the more fun sort of revenge or even revenge / pre-revenge tale that we got. Yeah
100%. Listeners, voting is now open on Patreon, and check out our Instagram story next Wednesday for the final round of voting. But that will do it for this episode. Jen, thank you so much for joining us.
Of course. I had a great time listening to This horrible tale.
And it's about bedtime.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, at least it wasn't Carl Panzram.
That's our new motto. At least it wasn't Carl Panzram. Zach, thank you as always.
Yep, thank you.
For everyone here at the Revisionists, I'm Brian Flynn.
I'm the Shack, the Shack thing I said at the beginning.
Yeah.
Spooky.
I'm Bone-in Flynn. Boneless Flynn. There we go. Boneless Flynn.
Bone-in sounds like a pork chop. So
yeah,
pork chop Flynn. Yeah, I can get behind that. I'm Jen E. Kruger.
Okay.
Told you I had a good one.
Have a spooky time.
Spooky.
Spooky. Yeah. Enjoy the sound effects in our outro. We used to have to do the sound effects manually, but then last year I made this outro that has the sound effects built in, so...
Yep.
One less thing we have to worry about.
October 15th, 1863. The H.L. Hunley, the first submarine to sink a ship, kills its inventor when it itself sinks. The Hunley is a Confederate ship, so this actually rules. October 15th, 1888. Police in London received the infamous From Hell letter, allegedly sent by Jack the Ripper, back when you could mail something all the way from hell with just one stamp. So fucking stupid. October 15th, 1878. The Edison Electric Light Company begins operation. Its slogan, light for people who fucking hate elephants. And last one, October 15th, 1939. New York Municipal Airport is officially dedicated. It's later renamed LaGuardia, which is Italian for bad airport.
I actually have 5, because there's a lot this week, I feel like. Mm-hmm. October 15th, 1793. Marie Antoinette is tried and convicted of treason, but more accurately, of being a woman with little control of even her own life that was easy to blame. October 15th, 1888. The From Hell letter is allegedly sent by Jack the Ripper to investigators, completely overshadowing the From Purgatory letter from Jack the Backhanded Complimenter. October 15th, 1917. Dutch dancer Mata Hari is executed by France for espionage, but more accurately, for being a woman with little control of even her own life that was easy to blame. October 15th, 1939. New York Municipal Airport, later called LaGuardia Airport, is dedicated by the ceremonial passenger getting hammered at the Shake Shack and pissing in a corner. October 15th, 1966. The Black Panther Party is created by Huey P. Newton and Bobby Seale. J. Edgar Hoover is hospitalized for an erection lasting more than 4 hours.